This is the Zac Anesbury Show.
Welcome. Today's podcast clip comes from an interview with Julian Major from Visit Victoria. I feel there will be a built-up, pent-up demand. I know it's been a little bit different for you in Victoria, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So we've spoken a lot about international travel and interstate travel. And because our premier, it's very risky as to whether any of the premiers are going to kick you out of their state or lock down their own. I've been a bit hesitant to do interstate travel. So I've done a lot of, it's referred to as intrastate travel. So in South Australia, the big destinations for us are Kangaroo Island. We did like the Mount Gambier sort of Coonawarra sort of regions as well. And I also did Flinders Ranges, which if no one has been to is freaking stunning. It's pretty cool. You can climb something called St. Mary's Peak. It's like the 9th highest peak in South Australia, unless you head closer to the Northern Territory border. And it's also one of the only ones that you can climb without permission from the local Aboriginal population there. It is absolutely glorious to get to that high point, sit there. We just had a sandwich as we sat there and relaxed, and I would recommend it to absolutely everyone. But now I'm thinking, okay, the only other places I can go to are like head to Whyalla, then go further south and go to Port Lincoln. And I don't know when I'll do that, but I need to maybe look at the South Australian tourism website. I need to find more things to do in my own state. How's that been for Victoria? Because I know you guys obviously had the bigger lockdown. So that's hurt every possible facet of tourism. Now that you're out of lockdown, and for those listening, I think it was about 120-ish days.
About that.
Where you pretty much couldn't move 5 kilometers from your house, and you were only allowed 1 hour outside to get a little bit of exercise and food.
Essentials. Doctors'
essentials.
Like
and to your credit, you guys did a very, very good job. And now you have pretty much what the rest of the country has, which is sporadic outbreaks, which we all managed to contain pretty well because of contact tracing. How's that impacted intra-tourism beyond the obvious of none of it occurred for 120 days?
I think it created a lot of pent-up demand. It's such a unique situation to be in that tourism is defined by the distance that you move. So there are clear definitions of when you're a tourist and when you're not, and you couldn't go 5Ks from home during the second lockdown in Melbourne, which is not tourism no matter what you're doing in that 5Ks. So everything did ground to a halt, and really tricky situation to be in from a destination marketing perspective, knowing that you can't promote travel because it can't happen. But we definitely did all we could to keep that destination messaging going throughout that for...
So you're still advertising during that time?
So what we did was a campaign encouraging people to shop locally from businesses that are typically tourism businesses. So you can't go to a winery, but you can order a box of wine from, a quality winery in the state. And we have, great producers and makers.
World-class producers,
whether it's honey, I got a lot of good artisan butter. We highly recommend buying good quality butter. So we teamed up with a lot of...
that sounds like such a Melbourne thing to do. We have artisan butter, none of this like meadow leaf for us.
So, and what was good about that was it was still a tourism campaign, whilst clearly it's not telling people to travel. And a lot of the platforms that we were promoting were, talking about where the produce comes from. We used it as an opportunity to tell local stories about communities and makers within that. And, it really, it potentially opens people up to, places they haven't been before. So, I've never been to the high country, but I'm buying some craft beer from this, amazing brewery, and, it looks fantastic. I can't go there now, but I'll buy a 6-pack and maybe I'll visit after. So, that was something that I think everyone here is quite proud of. A lot of sales were made. It was, I think, a really important, way to support, the visitor economy during that period. But So we tried to keep that destination message going, and we knew throughout that period there was a lot of pent-up demand for travel. People wanted to do the right thing, and they did. And the second wave dissipated, but as soon as that's what we call the steel wall of the divide between Melbourne and regional Victoria, as soon as those movement restrictions came off, there was a lot of interest in, particularly in getting out to the regions. So that sort of really kicked up the second week of November for us. It was a unique situation for Victoria because we came out of our lockdown in a traditional peak period for tourism. So you already had a fantastic time to travel, which people were used to travelling in, and people had been in their homes for 4 or so months in, when you think about Victoria, primarily metro-based environments, the prospect of getting in your car, getting out to nature, experiencing something new, even, just spending, even though you've spent a lot of time with your direct family, spending quality time from them away, it's very different. So definitely the regions had a good period over Christmas, and I think we're really optimistic about the interstate market for some time. It's been a resilient market for a while. It's been one that we've invested more and more into promoting, but we think it's going to be a really strong year. And it is the whole, I suppose, the silver lining of the pandemic is it's, like you say, it's opening people's minds up to exploring more of their own backyard. At the moment, that's primarily within your own state, but most states in Australia have a lot to offer, and very few people have been to all areas of their state. And even if you've been to an area of their state, the product and the experiences are ever evolving, and there's a lot of destinations that are great to go back from a repeat visitation perspective. So I think you're right. I think the interstate market's going to be a lot more challenging, and before this situation with border changes happened, the interstate market was really in its infancy of recovering. So I think that's going to take some time, and it's going to be dependent on a lot of external factors. I think people still want to do the things interstate. That underlying desire is there, but of course, those rational factors are going to override that if there's market uncertainty. But I think it's going to be a really good year for interstate tourism, and that's great for the regions. So the regions get about 80% of their visitation on average, depends on what region, through the interstate market. The biggest part of that is Melburnians. You can get regional Victorians also going to other areas of the state, but you've got a state with 5 million Melburnians who are hungry to travel, who want to experience something new. You can't go overseas, so it's a great opportunity for destinations to present themselves differently, for individual experiences, who may have had a lot of international visitation, to think about their offering slightly different for a local market, and potentially benefit as much as they can from the changing consumer behaviour.
Yeah, exactly. Did you want to give a bit of a, I suppose, shout out to some of the stuff in Victoria? Like when I visit Victoria, it's mostly for work. So I'm usually in the CBD, and I see all these nice cafes and restaurants, and it's world famous, the food and coffee scene in Melbourne. The only stuff I know really outside in the regions is the Grampians, because I like wine, and I know you have other wine regions and stuff like that. But what are the things that someone like me and a lot of other people that are really like just fantastic destinations that we should be visiting in 2021?
Yeah, I mean, we have we group our state up into tourism regions, and there's 11 of those, and each of them has a unique product offering, and even its own individual personality and feel, I suppose. We have beautiful coastal regions. Obviously, I would say our most famous region from an Australian perspective is the Great Ocean
Of
Road.
course. How did I forget that?
But also have beautiful coastal areas in Gippsland, the Mornington peninsula. We have, great wine regions that have fantastic food offerings as well, in places like the Yarra Valley.
Yes.
I think what separates Victoria from somewhere like South Australia is that we have a lot of really interesting, relatively larger sized towns. So places like Ballarat and Bendigo, I would really recommend. I can't name the population off the top of my head, but it would be quite sizable. So they have, fantastic food scenes, but it's slightly different to, the CBD environment. They have really cool regional art galleries. So it's an incredibly diverse state. Daylesford, I would recommend the most natural hot springs in Australia, located within that region. And a lot of regions that have, I suppose, like what we'd call big nature experiences. So Grampians is a great example of that, close to the South Australian border. So, you can always travel back quite quickly if you're a bit nervous about that, but still want to experience what Victoria has to offer. And Gippsland is a region that we're promoting as well a lot. So I think people forget, but it's really been a double crisis for some regions, and that you've had the bushfires. So, that was really tough, not just from a tourism perspective, but that impacted Gippsland and the high country, and those are areas that we're really dialing up in our marketing. We definitely want people to explore all of Victoria, but those are two regions that have been hit with that double whammy, and all the data that we're seeing and the anecdotal feedback is that people do want to support those regions. They are getting back there, so I could probably go all day with that. And Melbourne's great as well. I think Melbourne is a region that's going to that is probably in a unique situation relative to regional Victoria, in that no international visitors and less interstate visitors impacts Melbourne the most. But, the city has a lot to offer, and it's not just the CBD. I would say, Zac, if you come down next time, get out into some of the interesting suburbs and neighbourhoods and precincts that we
show me around. I'd love to.
Yep, get down to trendy Fitzroy, or venture out a bit more and go down to Footscray. Very multicultural, fantastic food options, fantastic cultural experiences. So I think Victoria is an interesting state. It's the smallest state in Australia, so it's very compact, and there's just so much diversity and experience across the state. And that would be true of any state. And it's great that people are exploring their own backyard and wanting, they get something out of it as a traveller, and they know they're supporting their local community and supporting businesses that otherwise would be really hurting without international visitors.
Yeah, I'd love to see like the suburbs surrounding Melbourne as well. Normally when I'm there for work, with Adelaide, you're on the red-eye flight, and then you're catching like a 7 or 8 p.m. flight back to Adelaide after your presentation. And there's not a whole lot of wiggle room in between. I'll have to try to slot in, try to get everyone to get me there on a Friday for a presentation, and then spend
an extra
weekend.
Day. We call it pleasure. So mixing business with pleasure, tack on an extra day, and an interesting trend that might pop up in 2021 is we've now learned that we can work remotely.
Yeah.
So a great way to potentially extend your trip is to say, I'll go to regional Victoria and, work from the hotel or work from the Airbnb, and I'll still be able to go out at night. I'll be able to extend my trip. And potentially that might be a trend that we see from an international tourism perspective as well. There's, we can work it's a very biased white collar perspective, but a lot of people can work from anywhere, and we've learnt how to do that. So thankfully we have high speed internet at the moment. Yes,
and we can speak to anyone anywhere in the world instantly in high definition. It's crazy. well, for the people that we work with anyway. I think that's pretty cool in terms of the way I think the world is going to operate for tourism. We've had a similar thing with KI and so Kangaroo Island and Adelaide Hills. We had those same fires, and there's a lot of support from like South Australians to be like, all right, we're going to go to these wineries and these small producers in the Adelaide Hills, and we're going to support them, and we're going to buy like Kangaroo Island Distillery, like their spirits, their gin. I think their gin's quite good, and they have like honey and stuff there as well. And then it was like, then COVID hit, and then everyone's like, oh, we can't just support you guys. Like, we're all in trouble now. So, yeah, we all they got double hit, unfortunately. And for them, in some way, it was kind of lucky there was a little bit of a grace period where we could support them before everyone kind of needed support again.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, hopefully this year's a little bit not bushfire free.
Hey guys, it's Zac Anesbury here with just a couple of quick reminders. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, then make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. There are plenty more interviews to come with some of the world's leading marketing academics and practitioners. You do not want to miss these. In the meantime, if you're looking for another way to connect, then follow me on Twitter at Zac Anesbury. That is ZACANESBURY for my take on the marketing issues of the day.